On this question, we're trying to figure out the two solutions to this quadratic equation. And once we get those two solutions, we're trying to figure out what's the products of them and then also multiply by a negative. So there's a lot going on here. To me, the easiest way is going to be using Desmos. So let's go ahead and do so. So we'll go ahead to the upper right corner here, click on the calculator. And there are a couple of approaches of what you could do here. So I'll show you both just so you kind of understand what's going on and you can pick what makes more sense to you. So first, I'm going to just type it in the exact way that I see it, including the equals 5. I'm going to call it x because notice if you instead replace it with t, and I like to use shift 6 to do the exponent, but you could use the keyboard that's in the lower left corner here. But notice it doesn't recognize this, it's confused. You only want to use something other than X or Y if you're doing the slider feature, which is only when the value you're trying to find is actually a constant, not a variable. So all that to say, we'll go ahead and change these to X's. And right there, really the goal is to find solutions which are x-intercepts. So notice here's one of them, which is really nice and easy to identify. Same thing here. And I like to go ahead and press this so that it puts those right in there. Now we could choose to label them if we want. The other thing we could have done is, let's say if we had, I'm gonna go ahead and turn this one off here. Let's say if instead we had typed in, let's go down here and type in these functions as 4 times 1 minus x as its own function, 5x squared as its own other function. And when we're setting them equal, you're really trying to find the points of intersection. So notice these intersect right here, and notice that x coordinate is really the solution, which is the exact same as this one. And then the other point of intersection is up here, and notice that ordered pair. Let's go ahead and actually put those in here. Let's do the same thing down here. So this point of intersection, kind of have to zoom in sometimes to get really accurate. So I'd say the first approach is easier. But notice this x value and this x value are the same, and then same thing with these ones. So I do think it's a bit easier to just type it as is and find the x-intercepts. And once we've done so, we're gonna go ahead and just calculate the fact that they're saying negative and the product of the two x-intercepts. So let's go ahead here and type a negative, and then we'll type one of those x-intercepts. I'm just going to copy it. I'm pressing Control C, and then I'm going to go here, Control V to paste it. I'm going to press times, which is Shift 8, or again, you could use the keyboard. And then we'll take this one, Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and notice I get this value. Now it's not exact, but you can tell with all these zeros, it's basically 0.8. And so I would just type in 0.8 and be done with it. However, in case you're curious how to do it by hand, really just for your own math class purposes, but remember we got 0.8, I would totally move on, just be done with it. But just to help strengthen your math skills as well, if we were solving this, we would go ahead and distribute. So that's kind of the, if I don't know what to do something step. And then because I have more than one type of x or t, I have to the second and to the first, I really need to get everything equal to 0. I want to keep my leading term here positive. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the 4t over by adding it over, and then I'm going to bring this 4 over by subtracting it. All that's equal to 0, whether I put the 0 on the left side or on the right side doesn't make a difference. Now you may have used the quadratic formula before and learned the formula in different songs. The one that I like is, in this case, t equals, but normally x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Catchy, right? So we'll go ahead and plug this in, negative b plus or minus the square root b squared, in other words 16, minus 4ac all over 2a. And then we'll go ahead and start simplifying this. I'm going to run out of space pretty soon here. So negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16. A key thing for me is whatever that sign is, obviously it's always going to be negative. I want to count how many negatives I have. So including that one and then anything to the right. Well, notice in total I have 2 negatives. An even number of negatives is always going to result in a positive. Whereas if I had an odd number of negatives, whether it would have just been the 1 negative or all 3, if they had been negative, I would have gotten a negative. And then when we multiply, we have 20 times 4, which is 80, and that's all over 10. So let's continue to simplify this. I'm going to go over here, and we have negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 96 all over 10. And we could simplify the root 96. However, you're going to see why that's not really necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and take technically our two solutions here of negative 4 plus root 96 over 10 and negative 4 minus root 96 over 10. And I'm going to go ahead and do this where I do negative one of those, which is negative 4 plus root 96 over 10 times the other one, which is negative 4 minus root 96 over 10. And here's what I want you to see. We call these conjugates, which is when these are opposite signs in the middle, but everything else is the same. So when I'm multiplying that, I'm going to do first, and I get 16, keep this negative out front. And then I'm going to go ahead and skip the outer inner, because notice if I do negative 4 times negative root 96, I'll get positive 4 root 96. If I do this one, I'll get negative 4 root 96, and those totally cancel. So now I just have to multiply the last ones. So the positive versus the negative, which multiplies to give you a negative. Root 96 times itself is going to essentially be the same as squaring it, because it's times itself. The roots cancel, and I get 96. That's all over 10 times 10, or 100. I still have this negative in front. I got to make sure I make that clear that that's in front. And I know this is getting kind of crazy, and you're seeing why Desmos was really superior. But when I go ahead and combine the 16 and negative 96, I get negative 80 over 10. And I still have this negative in front. So that makes a positive. And I see I forgot to actually, I said this was 100, I think, but I didn't put that 0 there. So let me put it there. When you reduce, you get 8/10, or 4/5, or 0.8, which we got at the very beginning. All that to say, the easiest thing was definitely Desmos, and we get 0.8 as our answer.